Hi guys, I'm Shruti and today's video is for me to discuss with you all the kind of expenses that I incur as a student studying abroad. So without any further ado, let's get started with the video. So the first and the foremost thing you need to know is that all the expenses that you incur in France are going to be divided into four major categories. So the first one is going to be accommodation, then it's going to be food, then it's going to be commutation, and the last one is going to be leisure. So coming to the accommodation first. Now, accommodation is something that will take up the major chunk of all your expenses. So in France, even though it is cheaper than UK and US in general, but it is quite expensive when it comes to European countries, and especially Paris is very expensive when it comes to accommodation because you get really tiny apartments and they are at skyrocket high prices. So you need to be wise with what kind of locality you choose. You need to be knowing how much you want to spend on the accommodation and then decide for yourself. So for me, I was spending around 600 euros at my student accommodation with ESSEC. And when I moved to Paris, I started spending around 800 euros. And I stay in a two-room apartment with my friend. And it's not a 2 BHK like we see in India, but it's rather a hall converted into room and another room. So it's a two-room apartment. Now, what is the most important thing in France is that as a student you are entitled to get back some of the expenses you incur on accommodation back from the government of France. So in both the cases I am entitled to get 207 euros back from the government. So in my previous accommodation, I ended up paying around 400 euros, and in this one, I will end up paying around 600 euros. So I would say a lower limit on the rent would be around 400 euros for a person, depending on if you're outside the city, if you're in a smaller city in France. So that could be a good estimate for your own room in an apartment. And the upper limit is going to be 1500, which is going to be for a studio in Paris, for example. So that is something you can keep in mind and then deduct 200 from it. That's what you're going to get back from the government of France. Now coming to the next category, which is food. Now food is again going to be dependent on if you cook more often or if you eat out more often. Now assuming that a person is cooking all their meals and they're also meal prepping for taking their lunch with them when they go to work or they go to the school, then you can expect around 50 euros per week as an expense towards your grocery, and that will amount to around 200 euros for a month. Now, but when it comes to eating out, there is no limit on how much you can spend. But for me personally, I was eating my lunch at school and I was prepping up other meals like breakfast and dinner. So I was spending around 350 euros, which is 50 euros per week. So 200 euros in a month for grocery. And other than that, around 5 to 6 euros a day on meals outside my school or inside my school or whatever. So that's a good amount budget. Now coming to commutation. So in France, you get a travel card from SNCF, which allows you to use all their bus facilities, all their trains, all their trams, everything basically when it comes to public transportation. So that card costs about 80 euros a month. But if you are 26 years or younger, you have to pay only 50% of it. So I ended up spending around 38 euros per month on that card. Now that was more than enough for going from one place to another in Paris. But other than that, if you still need to take a bike sometimes for short distance travel, you can definitely do that. And for that, you can expect spending around 1 euro a day, and that will add to 30 euros in your budget for a month. So for commutation, you can expect to spend around 68 euros at max. But of course, I'm not considering the fact that you might take taxis or Ubers, because that is not something I can estimate for you. Now, the last category is leisure. So, for leisure, again, it's a personal choice, but just to give you a very quick idea, for every meal that you eat out, you can expect to spend around 10 to 12 euros in a good place and about 7 to 8 euros in a decent cafe. So, that is for your meal. So, depending on how many times you eat out, you can add it in your budget. Now, if you like to do any other activity when it comes to going to museums or visiting any kind of touristic place, when you come to study in France, you get a student card which is going to make you eligible to visit all these places for free. And of course, if you're more than 26 years of age, you might have to pay sometimes. So that is about the leisure activities. I think I've covered most of the expenses I incur as a student in France. But if there's anything else you want to know, please feel free to write down in the comments below, and I would be more than happy to answer it for you. And that was about today's video. I hope this was helpful, and I hope to see you guys around. Bye bye.